G'day everyone. Well, as promised, I have a chart to go through. Ta-da! Looks very impressive, doesn't it? This is an add-on to last night's video and a response that's probably been long in the making about the biggest question of them all, which is, how would you change everything if you had the chance to? So where would you start, in other words? And it was this whole, this is where we've sort of come, and this is where we're going to go. So this is completely hypothetical. Like, the chances of this ever actually happening is probably 0.005% chance. So it's just something I thought I'd throw on a video, and I'm fascinated to see what the discussion goes, or where the discussion goes with this, because this isn't just about, oh, well, I'd get rid of, social media, or, well, I'd do this, it's not a very decisive sort of thing. This is basically setting the groundwork from the very top down, and clearly there's going to be a whole lot of holes in this, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And like I said last night, constructive criticism is a good thing, and I think it's probably something that some people have probably thought about, but not a lot. So I suppose we'll start from there and then just see where it goes. So I'm going to start with, if this is predominantly based on Australia, I suppose. Other countries are going to be completely different, possibly. Although it may work, I don't know. Like I said, this is a first run of this, so there's going to be more holes poked in it than I can point a stick at. But you've got to start somewhere. So there has to be some sort of reasonable discussion to sort of start. So let's get started. This is going to be fun. And I know what I'm opening myself up to. So I've got no qualms about that, funnily enough. So here's the hypothetical situation. Everything that's been happening, and it was funny, I was just watching the news and saw another story about it all. So, and that's why I'm now sitting here, because as soon as I saw it, I switched it off. So everything that's been happening, hypothetically, and this is very hypothetically, right? May never happen, I don't know, comes to a standstill, and the public decide, enough of this rubbish, we want to start again. So it comes to a stop. And it creates, and the way I've vaguely set up this mess is I'm suggesting that there would have to be a gap. So this is your stop point, this is your start point, there's space in between. And I think I'm going to sort of roughly say about 12 months. So what I've suggested is this gap would involve the existing government to remain for 12 months, right? And that's going to be probably the first thing that will be shot in the bum, but we've got to start somewhere. So this time would allow for the existing services to be gradually stopped, because you can't just put a stop on certain things, and then start again. And I've always said the whole system needs to start again. I'm not talking little bits and pieces of it. So that would be my suggestion. No new legislation to be introduced, no overseas tours, and no media interviews. All existing government duties to be fulfilled to allow the country to continue operating as it always has. So it's a gradual wind down, and some people might suggest 12 months is not long enough. Some people might suggest that 2 years is probably better off. I don't know. I'm not a political person at all, so I don't really care. It will also allow the new committee of 5, and I'll get into them in a minute, to be voted for, an introduction of advisory committee to start work ready to advise the committee of 5. All existing operations to be ceased and wound down, as well as long-term employees. So basically you have a government, right? You've got a president, you've got a prime minister, whatever, right? Underneath that, you've got a team that goes down, right? And all of those are voted in, and that's who we see in the parliament or however it runs in another country. So they've all gone. They're, as far as I'm concerned, that's done and dusted, stopped, right? They've got to start winding things down and I've given them 12 months in which to do that. But underneath that, you've got hundreds of thousands of more. And basically, these people never get voted in. Most of them have been there for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And they're the ones that actually run the government, right? Because even when a new prime minister or president comes in, they're still there, right? It's a full-time job. That all has to go, right? Because we're starting from scratch. And this is where it becomes excessively hypothetical, because the chances of this happening, like I said, are just about zero. But so existing Senate and Parliament will be shut down, no longer applicable, because there's no more legislation going through, no more discussion about it, no new laws created, nothing for 12 months, right? Any contractual agreements with any corporation or company with more than 20% overseas investment will be suspended or cancelled. So what we're doing is basically shutting down all the mineral exports that are leaving the country. So where the government virtually is just giving it away, right? We want that back. We want the money from that. Any existing overseas investment to be transferred to government ownership and to then be contracted by Australian ownership, with a minimum 15 to 20% of all profits to be maintained by the Australian public or the American public or whichever country you come from. Now, 15 to 20% is probably too high, but there has to be, like I said, this is all about having somewhere to start. And like I said, the chances of this are probably never going to happen anyway. So there's a couple of committees that I mentioned in there. The first one is the Committee of 5. And the second one is the committee of, or an advisory board / committee. Now, I kept thinking, how do we actually do this such that you don't actually have one person making the decision, right? So what I'm suggesting is that there's no more prime ministers, no more presidents. This is a start from scratch, completely in every single way, all the way from basically the very top to the very bottom. All of that gets removed and we start again. So the question is, how do you start again? And thus this video. So the Committee of 5 is basically the leadership. So in effect, it's taking over your Prime Minister / President, except it becomes a lot more, how do I put it? their jobs are on the line, basically. So do the right thing or you're gone. Now, why 5? And I'm not suggesting male, female, black, white, Asian. It can be anyone who is actually born in the country, because we're Australians. And look, in Australia, the Chinese have been here since the gold rush. The Italians, the Greeks came just after World War II. So, there's a lot of 3rd, 4th, 5th generation people who've been here for a long, long time. So anyone who has a current birth certificate in the country is able to be voted in. So there's probably a lot more I need to get into, but basically it's a committee of 5, not 3, because I think you get a better mix of people. It also can't be an even number because obviously voting. So 3 was out. 3 has a tendency of producing one leader, and I didn't want that. I sort of felt that 5 was probably better because you then have a better group of people that are able to make decisions based on the public. So they're actually voted in by the public. They serve their normal 4-year term, okay? However, and this is where it sort of changes a little bit, the pay and superannuation, which is your retirement benefits, are based on the average wage of the current population of the country they're serving. So it's not like a normal job where, the Prime Minister's on $500,000 a year and then their superannuation lasts the rest of their life. No, that's not on here. Their jobs will be up for review every 12 months. If they're not pulling their weight, they're gone and vote in another one. So their jobs are very much on the line from the moment they get in to the moment they leave. No different to any other employment, really. If you're not pulling your weight after 3 months, I'm sorry, but it's out the door, thank you very much. So it really has to be based on, your average job. It's just that this one is a little bit more important, but there is no added benefits associated with it. Once your job is done, so in other words, if you do get through to the 4-year term, you're gone. You're not going back into politics. You're not going back into a lesser position. You're gone. Your job is done. See you later. Thanks for doing a great job. Enjoy life. So they are basically back to the normal workforce. No further politics involved at all. Decisions are to be final with no one person in charge. Now, the next one is meet once per week, meeting to be fully opened and televised. So everything they discuss is fully available to the public who voted them in. No secrets here, none at all. So the final decision is to be voted on with the majority to be minimum 3 verse 2. In fact, I'd almost make it 4 verse 1. I don't want coercion between people. Wages will be watched for any unauthorised increases. No gifts, dinners, so there won't be any lobbying, none of that, right? Because lobbyists end up getting what they want. No, this isn't about lobbying. It's not about commercial interests. That is all gone. So the idea would be to basically, with this committee of 5, is to have them in a situation where they fully understand that their one job is to do what the public demands them to do. And the only good will be directed towards the public, not to commercial interests. Commercial people who run these commercial interests are members of public, no different to anyone else. They just happen to be paid a lot more, and they think they have the power to be able to demand certain things from governments, either via dinners or parties that none of us ever get invited to. That sort of stuff stops. All legislation that is approved by the Committee of Five is to be reviewed from the ground up every 12 months to ensure there's no holes, no ways of actually getting around things, that it's pretty much airtight, basically. And like I said, it's kind of one of these things where I'm expecting people to come back and go, that's never going to work. Okay, you do it. You show me a better way of working. This is just, it's, like I said, the chances of this happening, next to zero. And this will probably end up getting extended to way more than what you can see on this A3 sheet of paper. There's a lot of white space left. And this is only one sheet of paper. So this was just me throwing ideas at something that I'd sort of been thinking about to start with. So right up the top, you've got the Committee of Five. That's your leadership. Now, 5 people are not going to be able to deal with all the branches of things underneath. So, education, defence, health, it just goes on and on and on. Mines and energy, all the things that are critical to running a country, right? They don't have the time, the ability to be able to do that. And that's the same way that works in current politics. You've got your leader, but then you've got the Minister for Defence, you've got the Minister for Education, the Minister for Health, etc., etc. So what I'm suggesting is an advisory board that basically provides reports once a week so it can be discussed. So each one of these people, and I haven't even started to begin to think of what departments they're going to be in, but that's the idea. And yeah, it's sort of sounding like what we've got now, but this will be far more controlled and just better. So again, they've got a 4-year term, no different to the Committee of Leadership or Committee of Five. They're more specialised, so obviously they're going to be paid accordingly. You can't just pull someone off the street and start expecting them to rewrite tax law. It's not going to happen. There's got to be some sort of or brainiacs in there who are good at certain things. And it might first appear as though they're more powerful, but the idea of the Committee of Five is that they need to be voting on this, and like I said, with the reviews every 12 months, and all the legislation that's coming from the advisory board to be reviewed from scratch every 12 months. There needs to be a lot of controls that have been severely lacking in a lot of things that we've seen, and because I'd like to see the public more involved in it, but I was thinking about it today, and I just don't think I trust, to a certain extent, the public. There's, as Chance has said, there's a lot of people out there who are, they're just not capable, so, and I don't really want to take it away from the public either, sort of thing, but I think it's too time consuming, and people just don't have the time to be able to actually go through things, and a lot of them simply don't have the interest either. So, they've got a vague interest, and they'll say they're 2 bits in a conversation, but otherwise, 24/7 for the rest of the time, they've moved on. They're thinking about what their 5-year-old's doing in the next room. So to sit down and actually go through something is kind of going to be too much. And as much as you'd like to see all of this a lot easier to consume, it just isn't. There's a lot of legal speak, and for good reason, I suppose. But yeah, I'm not sure that would kind of work. So again, the advisory board, their jobs are basically up for review every 12 months. If they're not doing the job that the public expect, they're gone, and we'll replace you with someone else. It is, and whether you're a 60-year-old who's been in the industry for 50, 40 years, whether you're a 35-year-old who's been in the industry for 15, doesn't matter. We need people in there to basically do the good of the Australian public, and that almost has to be a threat hanging over their heads. You either do the right thing, or we'll find someone else who will. And again, it's no different to anyone's day-to-day job. If I don't give the right service to the people that I'm dealing with, they'll find someone else. Everyone's expendable at the end of the day. And no matter how important you think you are to the company, they will find somebody else within 3 or 4 days, or, a week, who will do the job just as well as you have. They won't have the same relationships, of course, but you're not there to make friends. You're there to do the job the company expects you to do. So, and unfortunately, that is the case. So yeah, once their 4-year term is over, goodbye. Job done. See you later. They're not hanging around. They're not going into, private service or better jobs. No, they're back to whatever job they had before. So no lifetime service. That ends. Because I think the problem has been is that these people, because of their lifetime services, have become so damn powerful that the people that are voted in every 4 years really don't, they almost can't say boo around them. So I don't want them there. After 4 years, they're gone, just like the Committee of 5. Simple as that. No member to come from an existing service. So what I mean by that is that the advisory board, you're not getting those people we've just gotten rid of who are then looking for jobs. No, their job is over, right? This is brand new. There's no experience regarding, this is what I was doing under the previous governments that used to exist. No, you're gone. See you later. Find a house to retire in. Find another job. You're not wanted. We're starting from scratch, and that's the way it is. And there'd be no repeat. So in 8 years' time, they can't come back. Right? Once their 4-year term is up, that's it. You're done. All right? You've had your chance. Simple as that. I would love to show this, but everything is going to be back to front. So this is just a introduction, really, I suppose, for something that sort of, I'm pretty sure one of Chance's responses, he was thinking I was going to go in some other direction. No, I'm looking at it from scratch. So what happens as you come up to here? What happens next? That's what I'm looking at. And I'm not looking at, well, just get rid of social media, just get rid of these dumb little things. No. My response has always been, well, you've got to start from the start. You've got to start from scratch, basically. So the next question that comes after that is, well, where do you start? And this is my little video trying to throw something out and see what sticks, see what doesn't stick. So it's probably a little bit more analytical, but that's me in a nutshell. You can't give me an issue and not expect that I'm going to start thinking about it analytically. It's what I've been doing for so long, drawing houses, that you've got to sort of, it's not just a matter of, oh, that room's nice, well, no, is it usable? Where's the furniture going to go? How do people move through the room? It's a lot more complicated than what a lot of people sort of first admittedly think. So it's about sort of taking it not just to the next little step, but jumping over and going, okay, let's take an idea and see where it ends up. So, but that's my video. I don't think it'll ever happen personally, but it is just something I'm throwing out there. Have a great night. See ya.